darlings, Mimi G here with another sew along as part of my Mimi G for Simplicity pattern collection. Today we're working on Simplicity pattern 1115. Let's get started. If you are new to sewing or just need a refresher, I suggest watching the Sewing Basics video where I talk about all of your basic tools, how to read your pattern, how to understand what size to cut, how to cut your pattern out, how to cut your fabric, read grain lines, and understand the printed information on your pattern pieces. I suggest you view that entire video and then come back and follow this video. Here are some specific tools you're going to need for this project. You're going to need a 20 to 22 inch invisible zipper. You're going to need some boning. You can buy this either in the package or by the yard. And you're going to need some interfacing. And of course, you're going to need pattern 1115. On the back of the pattern envelope, there are a list of suggested fabrics. We're going to be working on view A and C. Now, the only difference between view A and C is that one has the overdrape and one doesn't. This sew along is going to be for view C that does not have the overdrape. If you would like to sew the overdrape and attach it, simply follow along with the video for view B. Here are the pieces you need to have cut out for view C. You're going to need to cut out pattern pieces 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're going to be cutting these out of fabric and also out of lining fabric. You're going to need to cut out pattern piece 5 and 6 out of interfacing only. And you're going to need to cut out pattern piece number 12 and 13, which are the front and back of your pant. Now that you have cut out all of your pattern pieces and your fabric, we can start sewing. But first, the interfacing pieces that you cut out for the front and back bodice are not applied until after we start to sew our bodice together. So just set these aside right now. Do not apply the interfacing. As I mentioned in the Sewing Basics video, it's a good idea to pin your pattern to your fabric so that as we're sewing, when I say please grab pattern piece number 4, you can easily identify what we're working with. Okay, we're going to start with pattern pieces 1 and 2 of your fabric. And the center portion of the front was cut on the fold. And so you're going to take one piece of pattern piece number 2 and we're going to pin. Make sure that you pin at your notches. Match those notches. And we're going to start sewing from the bottom up using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to take the other side and do the same thing. Pin at your notches and sew starting from the bottom. Now that you have both of your side fronts attached to your center front, we're going to go ahead and set this one aside, and you're going to do the same exact thing with your lining pieces. Okay, we're going to grab pattern piece 3 and 4, which is the back of our bodice. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to open up the center that was cut on the fold, and you're going to align your notches, right sides facing, of course. I want you to pin at your notch first. You should have double notches. And we're going to sew starting from the bottom. ahead and do the same thing. Align your notches, pin and sew from the bottom all the way up, and then go ahead and do your lining pieces the same exact way. Now that you have sewn both your bodice and your bodice lining for the front and the back, we're going to take these to the ironing table, and I want you to give it a press. What you're going to do is, for your fabric bodice, not your lining, for your fabric, you're going to press it open like this. You're going to press your seams open. And then for your lining pieces, and this goes for both front and back, for your lining pieces, you're going to press your seams towards the center. So both of these are going to be pointed towards the center and pressed. And on your fabric pieces, you're going to open up your seam allowances and press them flat. Okay, go ahead and grab your lining pieces. These are the pieces that we pressed our seams towards the center. This should be out of lining fabric. I'm clearly using the same fabric, but if you're using a lining fabric, you should have your seams pressed towards the front. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a casing where we're going to insert our boning. So what I want you to do is I want you to sew close to the edge, so about 3/8 of an inch away from your stitching line that you see here. And you're going to sew through all layers. So that we create a casing. And you're going to do that on the other seam. And then do the same exact thing on the remaining lining pieces. Once we have our casing sewn down, what we're going to do is at the bottom of our bodice, we're going to stitch across the bottom to create a stopping point for our boning. So just using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're going to stitch across the bottom of our seam allowances where we created our casings. And do that to both. Okay, we're going to cut out our boning. So what you're going to do is you're going to measure the length of our casing minus that 5/8 of an inch seam allowance at the top and at the bottom. And you're going to cut. And you're going to cut 2 for the front and then measure the back and cut 2 for the back. Once you have your boning cut out, go ahead and press your interfacing onto the top of our lining bodice front and back, and then you can go ahead and insert your boning through the casing. And you're going to insert it into both your front casings and your back casings. Still working on our lining pieces with the front bodice wrong side facing up towards you. I want you to go ahead and pin at the side on your left side. Align your notches. pin and then sew, starting from the bottom, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now we're not going to sew the other side because of course we're going to be inserting an invisible zipper. But it would be a good idea for you to go ahead and try this on now. So go ahead and put it over your body. Make sure that you have a strapless bra on or whatever bra you intend on wearing with this. And then simply pin the other side using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance so that you can see if you need to either take it in a bit or let it out a bit before we continue. Okay, set your lining pieces aside after you've sewn your side seam and go ahead and grab your front bodice piece, not your lining, but your fabric. And with the right side facing you, I have the front bodice piece with the right side facing up towards me. I'm going to grab the back piece and with right sides facing, I'm going to lay them over the top of each other, and instead of pinning on our left side, we're going to pin on my right side. And also starting from the bottom, sew your way up using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Give your seams a nice press. Now before we set this aside, I'm going to have you do some stay stitching. So what I want you to do is, on the back, I want you to stitch from the end to the middle, and then from the side seam to the middle. I am probably about a 1/2 inch away from the edge of my fabric, and I just want to stitch this so that it doesn't stretch when we start to sew. I'm going to stop at the center back, and then starting at my side seam, I'm going to stitch to meet that other stitching line. And you're going to do the same thing in the front. Once you're done with your stay stitching, go ahead and set this aside and grab your front and back pants. We're going to go ahead and make all of the pleats, all of the darts, in the front and back of our pant. So you want to bring your dart legs together, and I always make a notch at the very top of each dart leg. So I'm going to pin there. And then I just want to make sure that my dart legs match on both sides. So I'm going to put a pin through one dart leg and then make sure it's coming out on the dart leg on the other side. And I'm going to do that for all of my darts. And then starting at the top, back stitch at the beginning, and we're going to sew along our dart leg, and then we're going to sew completely off of our fabric without back stitching at that tip. Pull your threads, and you're going to make a little knot. So grab your 2 threads, and you're just going to do 2 or 3 little knots. Tie it, pull, tie, and pull. And this will avoid you having a pucker at the end of your darts. You're going to do the dart on the other back of your pant the same way, and you're going to do the same thing for the darts on the front of your pant. Okay, once you have all of your darts sewn on both the front and back of your pant, go ahead and give it a press. And then we're going to lay one front pant on top of one back pant leg. And you're going to be, of course, right sides facing. And you're going to pin at the inseam. So make sure to pin at your notches. And then all the way down your inseam. And we're going to sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And go ahead and press this seam open, and then do the other inseam for your other front and back leg the same way. Once you have sewn both of your inseams, we're going to sew the side seam of our left pant leg first. And the way to make sure that you're sewing on the left one is your front pattern piece, pant leg, should be facing you, and the back one should be towards the back. So that's how you're going to make sure that you're sewing the right one, because we have to leave one pant leg open where we're going to attach our zipper. So I want you to make sure that you're working on the left pant leg, and we're going to sew the entire side seam of this pant leg. So go ahead and pin, starting at the top, pin at your notches, and then pin all the way along the length of your pant leg. I'm going to sew starting at the bottom of my pant leg and working my way up using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you're done sewing your pant leg, you're going to do the same thing to the other leg. The only difference is that you're going to start where that notch is for your zipper. Okay, now that you have your entire side seam sewn together for your left pant leg, we're going to grab our right pant leg, and we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to be starting, instead of at the top of our pant, we're going to start at that notch. This is where the zipper is going to end. So that's where we're going to start to sew, leaving an opening at the top side for our zipper. Pin all the way down your pant leg and then sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now that you have both pant legs sewn, at your inseam and your side seam, you're going to turn one of them right side out, and you're going to slip it inside of your other pant leg. And then matching your inseams, go ahead and pin. And then match your notches and pin. And then pin a couple more times around the crotch area. And starting at the top of the front where your two notches are, we're going to sew that entire crotch. Okay, once you're done, you're going to pull out both pant legs. And you can go ahead and try this on now and see if you want to make any adjustments. Take in the side seams a little bit, take out the side seams, adjust your inseam. Now would be a good time to do that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and attach our bodice to our pants. So with the right front of your pants facing you, so the front of the pant is facing me, I'm going to grab my bodice, the one that is not interfaced or has the boning in it, and I'm going to place it right sides facing, and I'm going to start pinning at the opening. We have a side opening in our pant, and then the side of our bodice is open. I'm going to pin there first, and then I'm going to go ahead and align my darts and my side seams. And you're going to pin until you have the entire bodice pinned onto your pants. Make sure that your darts and your side seams all align. Once it's all pinned, we're going to go ahead and start at one side, and we're going to sew until we reach the other end using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now we've attached our bodice to our pant, creating our jumper. And now we're going to go ahead and insert our invisible zipper. Okay, I have gone ahead and turned my jumpsuit wrong side out, and we're going to create a basting stitch. So what I want you to do is I want you to pin at your waistline, making sure that you align that both seam allowance or both seam lines so that they are matching. And I want you to pin there first. And then pin one more time in between the top and the waistline on your bodice. And we're going to sew a basting stitch, which is the longest possible stitch your machine can make. And we're just going to sew until we reach the existing stitching line where we stopped or started our stitching for our pants. Make sure that the seam allowances at the waistline are up towards your bodice. Go ahead and press your seam open before we start to stitch down our zipper. Okay, we're going to pin our zipper to our seam allowance. So what I want you to do is we're only working on one seam allowance at a time. You're going to place your zipper so that the invisible side, the side that you don't see the teeth, is facing down and is right in the center of our seam line. And I want you to make sure that the zipper pull is above your fabric because we don't want that in the way. And we're going to pin, like I said, only on one seam allowance at a time. And pin down the zipper just so that it stays in place. And then pin across the bottom. And then starting at the top, we're just going to sew a basting stitch. We're still using a really long stitch. We're just trying to put this in place. Now you're going to go ahead and, working from the bottom up, do the same thing, stitching it down only to this one seam allowance. Now that we have the zipper basted onto our seam allowances, we're going to remove the basting stitch that we created for our side seam. So we're going to open that back up. And you're going to stop, of course, where our stitching is, not our basting stitches, but our first stitches. Turn your jumpsuit back out to the correct side, to the right side. And what I want you to do is I want you to pull your zipper pull all the way through to the inside, because I want it completely out of the way while we're sewing this. Like that. And then starting again at the top, this time we're going to be sewing pretty close to our teeth. So what I want you to do is, as you're sewing, I want you to pull your teeth open. Switch back to a normal length stitch, back stitch at the top, and you're going to be sewing, like I said, pretty close to your teeth, not onto your teeth, and you're just going to open it up just a bit as you're sewing. Stitch at the end, and you're going to do the same thing on the other side, except you're going to be starting from the bottom of the zipper. Back stitch. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and reach on in there, grab your zipper pull, and close your zipper. And now, as you can see, we have an invisible zipper. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open my zipper back up a bit and we're going to sew our lining to our bodice. So what I want you to do is place and pin across the entire top of your bodice. Make sure that you align notches, that right sides are facing, that your your side seams are matching, your casings are matching, and continue pinning all the way across the top. Okay, now we're going to attach our lining to our bodice. So go ahead and open your zipper up a bit, and right now I have the front of my jumper facing me. So I'm going to take my bodice lining, and I'm going to make sure that right sides are facing and that the front of my lining is aligned with the front of my bodice. And I'm going to pin at the side, and then I'm going to align the seam lines of my casings. I'm going to pin at the side seam. And then I'm going to pin across the back. And then using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch across the entire front and back using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you've done that, we're going to sew down all layers, including our zipper tape, pretty close to this edge here. I'm going to switch back to my zipper foot so I can get pretty close there. And you're going to stitch through all layers. And when you get to the bottom, you're going to turn up 5/8 of an inch. You can pin that out now so you don't forget. Go ahead and cut that corner and the excess zipper. Make sure you don't cut through your stitching, but you want to remove a lot of that excess. So when you turn it right side out, you have a clean finish. On both the front and the inside. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, once you turn your lining to the inside, we're going to go ahead and do a little understitching. So we're going to be sewing on the lining portion only. So you're going to reach on in there and making sure that if you feel through, you can feel that your seam allowances should be facing down towards your waistline. And we're going to stitch pretty close to that edge through all layers, only on the lining side, all the way across the back and the front. Gone as far as I can go, so I'm going to backstitch. And then just push this onto the inside. And I'm going to press the top edge of our bodice. Now on the inside, you can go ahead and turn under the remaining seam allowance of your lining, pin it in place, and then just hand stitch it closed. And I'm going to go ahead and close up my zipper. And all that's left to do once you slip stitch your lining onto your bodice is to do the hem of our pant leg. So go ahead and try this on one more time. Make sure you like the length. If you need to take up more hem than they give you as an allowance, go ahead. If you need to let it out some, if it's too short, this would be the time to make that change. I'm going to turn over 1.25 inches all the way around my pant leg. And I'm going to stitch close to the edge all the way around. And I'm going to do this for both pant legs. That's all there is to it. I hope you've enjoyed this sew along. Until next time, peace.